Hey guys, Josh Conan, strength and conditioning coach here at Competitive Edge Skating and Strength Training. In today's video, we're going to talk about an exercise that's way too overprescribed for hockey players and why you should stop doing it if you are doing it, because there's no carryover to your performance on the ice and it actually increases your risk of injury, and that is the bench press. So before we get into that, let's just first break down the shoulder joint really fast so everyone kind of knows the shoulder joint allows a great range of motion. It's a ball in the socket kind of joint, but it's going to be the synergistic relationship between your scapula or your shoulder blade and that humerus. So just for example, to even just get my arm overhead, once I get to about 30 degrees flexion here, my scapula or shoulder blades have to upwardly rotate like this in order to allow that full range of motion. Otherwise, the head of my humerus, that big part of your shoulder, and your acromion process, which is a part of your scapula, are going to hit that bone on bone, and it's going to feel like you're stuck. So you can't get overhead unless that shoulder or scapula rotates. Some ranges of motion that scapula can do is elevation up, depression down, protraction forward, and retraction back. So why this is important, because in hockey we have to be able to exhibit all of these ranges of motion. So using the hockey stick as an example, so stick handling is going to be a little bit more in the wrist, but if I was to go to a toe drag, for example, that front shoulder is going to protract out. If I was to pull that back in, I'm retracting. Switching to backhand is going to be the same thing. And even when I shoot, my front shoulder is going to protract down, my back shoulder is going to retract back, and then they're going to switch. So retract here and protract forward there. So the reason why the bench is not going to help with this is, as you can see, the shoulders have to move independent of each other. So each shoulder is moving in different ways compared to the other. So the bench press, what you're doing is you're training your shoulders to be pinned back and you're just pressing, which in hockey you're never having your shoulders do the same thing at the same time, let alone just be pinned back like that. So why this can be problematic is when an athlete starts training for their first time, they're 13, 14 years old, the first thing they're going to do when they get into the gym is bench press, because that's what our culture says is the best lift, and it's also really easy to do because you just lay down and press. So what they're going to have is they're going to have the shoulder forward position, and they're going to have a huge development in that anterior shoulder in the front here and no muscle development in the back. So their teres major, minor, infraspinatus, supraspinatus, all these scapular muscles that are used to move that shoulder around are going to be so underdeveloped that they're literally stuck in the shoulder position. So why that's an issue and can lead to injury is the number one shoulder injury in hockey is the separation, just the shoulder separation. So if your shoulder's forward and you fall on the ice or get hit into the boards, you're already in this compromised position, your chest is tight, you have all that stress on your clavicle, you get hit, it doesn't take much more force just to knock that shoulder out of that socket and cause that separation. Whereas if your shoulder's pinned back, you have all this musculature, and how your joint's set up is going to help protect you from that separation. So having that shoulder forward is already at increased risk of injury. So I can tell when an athlete walks in if they might have potential shoulder injuries. So another reason this can be problematic is if that shoulder's forward and they train overhead or even just hanging to do pull-ups with that shoulder forward, you can't get your arms all the way overhead. So what they're going to do is they're just going to keep leaning back to get those shoulders overhead. So as we know, hockey players are already really extended in their lower back because they're typically really long in those hamstrings and really short in their hips. So what they're going to do to fake that range of motion, as I said, is they're going to arch even more. So they're going to have weight overhead here, or if they're hanging from a pull-up bar, they're not going to be able to pull that rib cage down and keep a neutral spine. Or if they're still benching, they're going to have that arch to push more weight. And it's no wonder hockey players have all these lower back issues, groin pulls, sports hernias, and these are all just because they're stuck in this position and they keep adding stress to the tissues until they finally break because they don't have that resiliency in those tissues, in those positions. So this isn't to say that pressing's bad and you shouldn't press at all, because we still press here. So for example, we have that stability ball there and we have the chain. So you're going to have your feet on the stability ball. That's going to create that instability in your core. The chains are going to create that instability in your shoulders. And when we also teach push-ups, we'll have the athletes have their shoulders protracted forward, initiate that motion with retracting your shoulders, then do the push-up and go forward. So we're just trying to train these shoulders in all of these different ranges of motion, one arm overhead while the other one's down, so they can be put into all these different positions So they're not only strong in that, but those tissues are ready to be in those positions. So if they're forced into a different position in a game, they're going to have a huge less likelihood of injury because their shoulders are used to training in that position, as opposed to just being pinned back to press and then rest of the day here. So I hope this video kind of shows you why, if you are benching, to maybe question why you're doing it and maybe just stopping altogether, because that's going to be the best thing for you. And also shows the depth that we put into exercise selection for our athletes and the detail we put in, and how we can individualize a workout based on what an athlete's positional quality is and their training history. Make sure you like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, go to our website at ceskating.com, sign up for our Sunday email. This is where you'll get some words of wisdom for your week, and also we'll have our class times and training schedule for the week. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.